Mortimer's death was a great sorrow to us. To lose the vessel of his soul will bring his clan's fury upon you.
I could go for some bangers and mash.
Where is the body? The fate of the station lies with a missing alien corpse.
Are you threatening to make war over this? That is how the last one started.
On all new Babylon 5.
You have transmissions holding.
Patch incoming signal. Full audio and video decode.
Purple files accessed.
What you are about to see has never been shown to anyone outside the Break House.
And so it begins.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Welcome to Grade 17, a Babylon 5 podcast, a part of the Front Row Network and NPR Illinois Community Voices. We are a group of newbies and first ones who have either watched the show all the way through or are watching for the first time, and we are nearly done with season 1. We are looking at Legacies, which for us is episode 21 of 22. So first off, we will have our newbies talk about the episode spoiler free, not talking about what happens next or any time else in the show. And then we will jettison out the airlock and talk about any questions or predictions that they had with those of us who have already watched the entire show. I'm Scott, and with me as always is
Emily,
Jessi,
John,
Mike, Nicole,
Evan,
Blake, Justin,
and Andrew.
Before we get going, guys, we are getting some new reviews into Apple. So thank you everyone who's leaving their reviews. It really does help the show grow and get out to new people. So I wanted to read a review that came into us from Apple Podcasts, and that is from Fine Dining Podcast. I'm assuming they're their own podcast. So Fine Dining Podcast. Grade 17 places the audience in the Great Machine. You guys make the audience feel like Drawl in the Great Machine. The combination of fresh and experienced perspectives with the smattering of a B5 special guest provide an all-encompassing experience perfect for any B5 devotee, new or old. I would love to hear Jason Carter as a guest once you guys get into season 3. Well, Jason Carter is going to join the show, guys. Thanks for the spoiler, Fine Dining.
I don't know who it is. Yeah, it tells me nothing. It's fine.
I won't spoil anything because I'm good at that.
So again, please make sure that you like, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that notify button because we do live events as well too. And be sure that you go ahead and leave a review for us if you can. We really appreciate those reviews. It does help us grow. Along with that, we do have a Patreon. If you can go one step further, that is patreon.com/Grade17podcast. The link is in the descriptions below. Also, we do sell some merch as well through Redbubble. You can find the link for that down below as well if you want to help the show grow in that way.
Come join us on Facebook. We got a great discussion going about our ongoing shows and our other happenings. So please come check us out.
And on Twitter, I'm trying not to get blocked by JMS. That's the goal. Apparently, he does that a lot.
and join us on Patreon, where you can enjoy additional benefits such as being a producer of the show, our show notes, which are wildly entertaining from host to host, and drop us a line in a Q&A.
You'll also have an opportunity to join our Discord server that is run by me. And yeah, you'll just get an opportunity to just chat amongst us and other patrons who are on the server.
We are currently talking about old movies people should watch. At least we were a few days ago.
And getting pictures of Sean's delicious meals that he makes.
He is Irish, so there's definitely some delicious meals going on.
I could go for some bangers and mash.
Why is that funny? It's a good dish.
That should be the stinger to the episode. Like,
Yes.
Just no context. I can go some for bangers and mash right now.
Yes.
Always good.
All right.
I thought I'd get a laugh out of everybody. So.
Mike's having screwdrivers over there. Before we get going with first impressions, Jessi, I believe you have a synopsis for us.
A Minbari warrior's body disappears while lying in state on the Babylon 5 station. Several threats are made by the Minbari to start another war over the missing body. A young telepath with newfound abilities helps solve the case, leading to Delenn being found responsible for retrieving the Minbari warrior's body to fulfill the warrior's spiritual wishes.
Let's go ahead and go into our first impressions from our newbies, and we'll go to Andrew first. First impressions on Legacies.
Yeah, so this was a really good episode. I really liked kind of seeing Delenn not really like turn on the Minbari, but kind of going like on her own agenda, like with her own cast, like fulfilling his wishes, the dead Minbari's wishes, against what the warrior cast wanted to do. It was also kind of interesting seeing the dynamic between Talia and Ivanova in that B plot, with that, I guess you could call it a rogue telepath who doesn't know she's a telepath. It was interesting seeing that kind of back and forth between Ivanova and Talia with like what should be done with her while also trying to keep her safe.
Let's go to Justin next. First impressions.
I mean, for me, the episode was okay. I like the A plot with Naroon, I think is his name, right? The captain from the Minbari cruiser. I liked his character. I thought he was pretty interesting. I liked the kind of diving a little bit deeper into Minbari culture. I thought was pretty nice. Kind of seeing how they like to do funeral services and stuff like that. And so that kind of really caught my attention. But the B plot with Alyssa, I think was her name, the telepath girl, to me, the whole plot kind of felt pretty pointless up until the end. I mean, don't get me wrong, I did like seeing Ivanova and Talia like usual, but I didn't really care for, I guess, maybe the actress who played her. I really thought she was just really distracting. And then it all made sense kind of at the end. But for most of the episode, I was just kind of really just annoyed with that whole plot line. But that's all I kind of have on that.
Our buddy from Yum Yum Podcast, Ryan, kind of said the same thing you did. He said, an episode held together and ripped apart by the guest stars. As in, John Vickery's really good, and Grace Una,
said it a lot better than I did.
Let's go to Nicole. First impressions.
So I'm the complete opposite. First of all, I thought Naroon was a dick. I did not like him. But I actually liked the B plot in this episode a little bit better than I did the A plot. I mean, it was interesting to get a little more history on the Minbari and how they do things, but I just thought the whole pissing contest was a little annoying to me. Well, we're going to blow you up if you don't do this or you don't find the body. And like, he just kept making all these threats. And then when he jumped Sinclair and like trashed his room, like, I just was like, all right, dude, take a seat. You know what I mean? Like, I just didn't like him. I didn't like his energy. I thought it was, he was trying to assert dominance, and I just felt like it was a giant pissing match. That aside, I know there was a lot of history and there was a lot of interesting information I did enjoy about the Minbari, which was cool to learn. But I personally liked the B plot better. I really enjoyed Eliza, I think her name was. I thought that it was really cool to see how she kind of accidentally kept reading everyone. Like, she accidentally read Ivanova when she saw into Natoth's brain and like saw the darkness and coldness. It kind of really, it gave a little insight onto each person that she accidentally read, gave a little more insight to the Narn, gave a little bit more insight to everyone she interacted with. And she straight up caught Delenn being shady. I know that it was like, oh yeah, it's what he wanted. It was his wishes. And I did like at the end how Delenn was like telling that dude, this is what you're going to do. And this is how it is. I like that she asserted dominance in that moment and like told him how it was and gave him orders. I liked that because she put him in his place. But I thought from the beginning that Delenn was a little shady, and here we finally saw her be shady.
If you want to be on that island all by yourself thinking the B plot was better than the A plot, you do you, Nicole.
I will. I'll die on that hill. I'll die on it.
John, what do you got? First impressions.
Oh, man. I don't know how I can follow that. So let's get the negative right out of the way. Londo, not in this episode again, so it can't be an all time. Having said that, the pure sexual tension between Ivanova and Talia makes this very close to a top fiver. Also, I like this episode a lot because it was a huge info dump. We learned a ton of shit about Minbaris, about like a lot of different things. Some more Psychor stuff, some more telepath stuff. So I really, really like that. To your point, I think you mentioned last week, you get answers and we start getting answers, right? So we learned what started the war. We learned, how it ended, because I wrote my notes about the two factions and the Minbaris, like, how did they actually decide to end this? And we learned some of that info. We learned a lot of stuff, which I really like. I do agree with Nicole. I definitely wrote down Delenn being shady. Yet again, I am super pumped to hear Emily's thoughts on this episode. We've gotten a lot of Delenn recently, a lot of Minbari, so pumped to hear what's going on there. I did like the episode. And as far as the A plot, B plot, I didn't enjoy the B plot. I will agree with the actress wasn't great, but I enjoyed the info we got out of it. because it gave me some stuff. And it really, when we get to the questions part, I have a lot of questions now about telepaths. And I'll save that for that. And then the A plot was great. Again, gave me a lot of info, but then also left me with a lot of questions. This is if these were the type of episodes that were in the beginning of the season, this is what I like. You get a bunch of info and you still have a bunch of answers. So you want to watch the next week. Like this was one of the first times where I was like, man, I really want to watch this next episode. And they really set it up at the very end. So if we get more episodes like this in the future seasons, I mean, I might have to buy all the figurines and be Scott. I don't know. So
still working on my collection. It's going to be a while. But if you like the getting answers to your questions and want to watch that next episode, wait until season 2, sir. Just wait. Jessi, first impressions.
I enjoyed it. It was a good episode. I really enjoyed that the A plot interacted with the B plot, and they had something to do with each other. I enjoyed hearing a little bit more about the Battle of the Line. I enjoyed Sinclair's maturity in this episode. He definitely showed that he was the bigger person, because I'm not 100% sure I'd let somebody shoot at me and then turn around and vouch for them. And I also enjoyed Delenn and her kind of pulling rank at the end, where she was like, this is not how it's going to go. You could tell the look on her face, what she was pleased with herself when he was like, yes, I'll do what you ask. And she just kind of had this smirk on her face, and I enjoyed that part. But overall, I thought it was a good episode. I didn't hate it.
That needs to go on a shirt too. I didn't hate it, Jessi. Emily, first impressions.
I really liked this episode. And when we first saw Naroon, when he came on, I was like, oh, and the wanker of this episode is. And it's him. And I actually thought he was the one who hid the body, because I thought he did intentionally to start some shit, because he seems like that kind of person. So for it to turn out that was actually Delenn, because she was being all sneaky, was kind of surprising. I was confused though, because I have the DVD set, so this episode comes before A Voice in the Wilderness. So she's telling Naroon that she's in the Great Council. So seeing this after that episode, I was like, okay, so when this originally aired, would she have been like calling his bluff on that because he wouldn't know she had left the council, or is she not technically out yet? I was curious about that part.
We'll go over to our first ones next, and we'll go to Kevin. First impressions.
This is one of those episodes where, because I watched it a couple of times now, I'm talking myself out of liking it as much as I did initially, because I feel like the A plot has some problems, which I'll get into more. But overall, I do think it's a good episode. I don't have a lot to say about the B plot. I thought the B plot was good. I like the world building in this episode. There's a lot of information, like's been said, but I think there's kind of a flaw in the plot. But maybe someone will talk me out of having a problem with it.
Mike.
Yeah, overall I thought this was an okay episode. I liked a lot of the world building, like the others have mentioned. I thought kind of overall it doesn't do a whole lot to advance the narrative of the season, I didn't feel. And there's also something that I'll say is like, I view it as a trope that kind of bugs the crap out of me a little bit. I had a hard time getting over it after the beginning of the episode. Related to the whole Minbari ship coming in with its gun ports open and then almost getting into a firefight straight out of the gate. We can talk more about that later. But yeah, and the B plot, again, it's some world building, but I felt like it portrayed the Narn in a not very pretty light necessarily, although maybe that speaks more to the Toph than Narn as a whole. But yeah, so overall, again, nice world building. I thought for the most part, the acting and everything was pretty good. The character work was pretty good. Just kind of a, plot-wise so-so episode. It's no TKO.
So this episode it's all right. I like the A plot a lot better. The B plot for me in this one really didn't do much of anything except establish a bit more of a connection with Talia and Ivanova. But, I did not care for the actress that played Alyssa Belden. I just did not care for that portrayal at all. I think that could have been better done, perhaps, especially with such a stronger guest star with Naroon in the A plot. And just overall, I think a very solid episode as far as world building on the Minbari side of things. But I didn't really get anything out of the B plot at all that contributed much other than just a convenient
means to resolve the A plot.
Right.
Yeah, the actor in question is Grace Una, and she has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 credits to her name, all of which ended in 2000. She had a bit part in Gone in 60 Seconds, and when I say bit, I don't even know who she was in Gone in 60 Seconds. But yeah, I agree with you on that one. I will say my only first impression on this episode will always and continue to be John Vickery. John Vickery. John Vickery. I freaking love Nehruin with a passion, and Nicole, we will fight. I think he's one of the best we've seen so far in terms of not really villains, but, you know, anti-heroes to come to the station. And his interactions with Sinclair, I really do love. And that final apology is a good scene, a very good scene. And it's actually juxtaposed to the last time Sinclair got an apology, when that was from the captain in Voice in the Wilderness, where Sinclair just hit the off button as soon as he possibly could. With this one, Sinclair was actually understanding and taking it, and a new kind of acceptance is between him and Nehruin. I think John Vickery sold that really well. And he also played Scar in the Broadway rendition of The Lion King. So he's pretty cool. All right, we'll go to Nicole. What do you got?
I will say, I will agree with you that end scene was really classy. The apology, that was really great. I did enjoy that. But I enjoyed seeing him put in his place a little bit more. That was even cooler. So I would say for me, one thing I wanted to point out, a couple things were, first of all, Ivanova's hair looked great. She looked really pretty in this episode, unrelated to anything. But at the end, when Talia apologized to Ivanova and said that she hadn't been very kind to her and offered to buy her a drink, I was kind of like shipping them. In my mind, I was like, yes, because I know we've talked about this before. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but I really like their dynamic, because I feel like as much as they have conflicts with each other, I also feel like they understand each other in a way. And I feel like they might mutually respect each other, at least, even though they don't agree on certain things. It was really cool to see them interact a little bit more. And I will say the girl who played Elisa, her voice was a little annoying. I just liked the whole plot line of like knowing a little bit more about, because like what we've learned about the Psychors, like you don't really have a lot of decisions or options. I like the fact that she demanded to hear the options, and like seeing kind of a little bit more into that of avenues that she can go down. So that's partially why I liked the plot better.
You know, I was actually intrigued to see how you guys would handle this episode now that Claudia Christian herself has spoiled for you that her character is bi. Because, I mean, you guys were already assuming it way before you had that interview. But now that you know Ivanova is bi, I wonder if you're looking into this stuff even more than what you would have.
I just feel like we called that like episode 1, right?
You did.
The sexual tension there, whether it's for the show or, you know, it doesn't really matter. It's there though.
We absolutely discussed Ivanova's sexuality in a Beyond the Ren episode, and now we don't have to do that anymore because you know. Kevin.
So my problem with the A plot is Delenn really sold the humans down the river, and when she could have used her position, you know, and the threats to solve it without endangering, you know, the station, Sinclair's command, or the whole bit. I mean, her thinking that she was going to be able to sell the Star Riders on, his body disappeared and, you know, it was magical and all that. It just didn't seem like it was ever going to go that way from my interpretation of the episode. And it just feels like nothing was solved throughout the episode. It was kind of like what Scott's said a couple of times to get at me about, it was about TNG, about like nothing changes and something like that.
Why Deep Space Nine is the best Star Trek? Yes, you're right. 100%.
But my point is that, you know, if the episode had not gone on that way, it was kind of, you know, useless, because the end of it could have ended that way and not had all the drama. So I just don't think that this episode is that tightly written. It feels like it was kind of unnecessary from a plot standpoint, other than it definitely had a lot of great information. And I will also join the chorus of really enjoying the heck out of John Vickery's portrayal of Naroon. He's a favorite of mine too.
Justin, you're next.
To kind of hit off of Kevin's point, I think did she not say at some point during the episode that the reason she couldn't just enact this guy's will was because he came from the warrior caste. His father was from the warrior caste. His mother was from the, what's the name of it? The religious caste. And because of the growing conflict between the two, that she felt that she would just cause problems among the Minbari people if she just took his body and had it cremated. So she had, I think she felt like she had to come up with some kind of crazy story to explain it that maybe both sides would accept. Now, whether or not it was the best story that she could possibly come up with, I don't know. I wasn't in the writing room that day. But I think she did try to explain why she did what she did at some point.
I can't remember which order this one originally aired, but I know on HBO Max it comes after Babylon Squared.
Yes. And that's actually a thing. Yep.
And I think and that's a thing in this, because keep in mind what happened with Babylon Squared when Delenn turned down becoming head of the Great Council, and they were none too pleased about that and kind of said, you go back to B5 and just let us ponder this for a while, you know. So you see Delenn taking actions and doing things in this episode, which maybe she didn't necessarily bother to have authority to do or could do without the backing of the Great Council, because she wasn't exactly on their good side if this episode follows Babylon Squared.
Which it's supposed to.
Which it is supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was one of the goof ups in other production orders, because they actually used the Triluminary in this episode that she got in Babylon Squared. And in some orders, that's goofed up, and she pulls out this device she's not supposed to have yet.
So this is the one time where HBO Max is not screwed up.
Yes. They fixed the problem.
Yeah, JMS actually said the same thing. He said that this is production order 15, so it was produced a little earlier on in the season. And like just Blake was mentioning, JMS didn't want to have two Psych-Core episodes right back to back, so his intention was to play this after Babylon Squared. But in the original airing, they didn't do that because of, reasons. So... But for us, it makes more sense. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, just backing up, I guess, what Kevin said. I kind of thought it was fairly irresponsible of Delenn to pull the shenanigans on Babylon 5 based on, in her own words, that she thought she could convince Naroon that some space magic happened and that's why the body disappeared. And then I guess to kind of just piggyback off that same train of thought, the other thing that really bothered me, and again, this is the trope that I mentioned earlier, and I call it a trope because this is also essentially how Star Trek Discovery starts. The fact that a Minbari warship enters Babylon 5 space with its guns out, and I understand they're trying to portray that as like a cultural thing, like, oh, they do that to show respect, here's our weapons out for you to see. I'm like, nah, dude, if you're not like British colonial going to somewhere with your guns out, like that's not how that works. And I don't think any like advanced civilization would think that it's a good idea to approach new people with like knives in their hands and think that they're going to be okay with that. So the fact that they almost had an exchange of weapons like right off the bat with a race that you even already know is like, the whole thing was just preposterous to me.
And that's a failure of Delenn. I mean, she could have easily just stepped in a lot earlier and said, hey, by the way, they're going to show up with their gun ports open. It's not a big thing. Just scan and it's fine. But that didn't happen. So it's just another reason why I feel like she really sold the humans down the river in this episode.
I will say, though, we're doing a lot to humanize Minbari when we don't know their culture. You say it's one thing to come out with your knives in your hands. They're really not, though, because what they would say is the gun ports are empty. So the whole point is showing them that, hey, we don't have weapons bearing down on you, but humans don't know that. So,
well, and even thinking back to, I'm going to go back to another Star Trek reference here with Next Generation and Darmok. Beams down to the planet, knife in hand, is a open sign. So we've seen that before where there's cultural reasons for it. Discovery was just crappy creatives. And
Darmok will be in Babylon 5.
Yes, he will.
He's a really good actor.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I get all that, but it still just seems to me like the Minbari have dealt with humans before. So I can't believe that nobody knew that was what was going to happen anyway. But take that aside, I just have a hard time thinking that an advanced civilization would not consider how another race of people would react to that, I guess.
John?
Oh man, so many things were said that I want to address. Let's start with a question that doesn't have to be saved because it just came up. Since you mentioned the production order, so if this was production order 15, obviously this is episode 21, was Chrysalis, which they kind of preview, you know what I mean, that the stinger right there at the end, was that always meant to then be the follow-up episode, or was it always meant to be the finale? And then I've got some thoughts.
Chrysalis.
Yeah. Thank you, Jessi. Chrysalis. Yeah, no, Chrysalis was always planned to be the season finale. One thing again, this is really just season one, because after season one, it's not that big a deal, but JMS absolutely has his main story points mapped out. So he knows his first episodes, his last episodes, his middle episodes, like Science and Portents. It's the stuff in the middle that gets a little gray. But yeah, Chrysalis was always planned to be the last one.
Okay. They did a good job leading into it. That's a good penultimate episode. Okay, so a couple of things. So when you mentioned the plot hole, I immediately also thought the same thing, because I wrote down, so if she could always have this conversation, if she could always present this as she did, which to Blake's point, I also wrote down, I thought, hasn't she kind of lost her ability to do some of this stuff? I mean, can she speak for the Great Council like she says? Seems, so that shady count up about 15 more notches. But my question was, why didn't she just do that to begin with? Why all this deception and this crazy story that she's going to tell? And, why make things so much more difficult when she could have just played basically the card she did end up playing and go from there? And especially because of the conflict, not even so much the humans. I mean, I'm sure she's got, I guess, we would call it a love for humans. We've seen her talk about it, but she definitely got a love for Sinclair, and she definitely didn't make his job any easier. And in fact, almost made it, super hard. Because I thought when he showed up, I thought he was just spoiling for I actually wrote down false flag operation. I thought he had done it himself just to get a reason, just to kick off the war again, and just blah, blah, blah. Anyways. So I really didn't understand why she would just have that conversation from the jump.
Nicole.
Another thing I noticed, or I thought maybe could be some significance, was at the very end when the guy was apologizing to Sinclair and they were discussing, like, let's look to the future, let's, do this. He said to him that he talks like a Minbari, and maybe it was a good idea that they, stopped basically from annihilating them. So I guess it's more of like just an observation I made, and with the whole Minbari Sinclair connection and the whole Delenn and Sinclair dynamic, like I feel, and maybe I'm totally reading this wrong, I feel like there's an animosity, like with Naroon from the beginning with Sinclair, but also at the end, I feel like maybe he realizes that maybe there's some similarities or something. Like there's something with Sinclair and the Minbari, and I just can't pinpoint what it is, but there's some sort of common thread there. I mean, I don't know if they just respect him as a leader, or because I feel like almost like it's like they either strongly dislike him or they love him, like Delenn, so I don't know. It's just an observation that I made, that he said that to him, and I was like, him saying that, the dynamic with Delenn, the whole thing of like they were the ones that demanded he lead Babylon 5, but then the other guy's like, we have to kill him if he remembers. Like there's just something with him and the Minbari, and it's just driving me freaking crazy. I want to know.
We'll talk all about that with you, Nicole,
in 2 years.
In about 2.5 years.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Oh, another random thing I wanted to point out was I love the fact that Ivanova said there's nothing more annoying than when Garibaldi is right. That made me laugh.
Andrew, what do you got?
One thing that I was wondering with at the end of this episode was because Sinclair points out to Delenn that how did you even were you even able to get that body out of the casket and away and cremate it without anyone noticing? And it wasn't really ever explained, so I don't know if you would call that a plot hole or just lazy, but that was just something that I noticed, that they never actually do touch on how she did get that body away. And
can you answer that? Can we not go beyond the rib? Are there no cameras, closed circuit on the ship?
Yeah, do they not have surveillance cameras?
The cameras operate at the power of plot, and therefore they were turned off. What do you want from me?
Plot armor.
Yeah, and I kept waiting for someone to point out. I was like, it was Minbari only who were guarding the body. So guess what? We have nothing to do with this.
Thanks, Kevin. You just stole my.
Sorry.
Put my hand down.
Mike has hand up for hours. This is why we have rules here.
It's interesting to me that we seem to have the most to say about this episode.
Hey, it's an important one for our characters. Not so much, we didn't move the plot along a lot like Signs and Portents, but our characters do a lot.
Yeah.
Nicole kind of touched on a point that I had as well about I think I wonder if Sinclair's importance to the Minbari depends on the cast. I have a feeling he's a lot more important to the religious cast than he is the military cast. The religious cast wants to save him. The military cast wants to kill him. And so, or they just may not agree that maybe he's this messianic figure that maybe the religious cast does. So I think and I think that's maybe why Delenn didn't really like him, just because he's a warrior, whereas Delenn and others. What's his name?
What the fuck?
Balloon?
That's not even close.
Like you said balloon.
Let me go back. Why am I already forgetting his damn name?
Naroon.
Thank you.
I was like, I don't know who the fuck you were talking about. Delenn. I was like, what?
To Justin's credit, they use a lot of titles and not a lot of names in this episode.
That's true.
It was confusing.
I think we're starting to get some viewpoint on the rift that's developing between the different casts in the Minbari, because they even said that so in the Minbari culture, the religious caste overrules the military caste or the warrior caste. So it was the religious caste decision to end the war. And the warriors had no choice but to just obey, and they're not happy about it. So what they're doing is, they're then trying to buck back against the religious caste, and I think that's what's starting the big rift that's going on, is over this decision to end the war. And I may have to adjust some of my predictions based on some of the information gleaned this evening, but we'll see.
Emily.
Damn it, Justin. That was actually what I was going to bring up, is the separate cast. Because, yeah, the religious cast was the one that abruptly stopped the war without an explanation. And so there's obviously a lot of tension there. And I was wondering if that was kind of why Delenn wasn't sure of how to navigate the situation. Because Naroon honestly did seem like he was going to show up to start some shit. I mean, he shows up, the gun ports are open. Whether or not they're empty is kind of irrelevant when you've, had a war with these people, and it's only been, 10 years? And their military leader is being laid in state on the Babylon station. That's pretty provocative, and it definitely comes across as trying to start some shit.
John?
Yeah, not to beat the dead horse, because that's why I mentioned the false flag earlier. Is it just seemed from the jump that this episode, and again, since I thought, we're going into the season finale, this will be the spark that lights the candle that perhaps gets this second war going or whatever. Because like Emily said, he came in just swinging, right? Oh, we're going to show guns. We're going to make all these demands. Sinclair's like, diplomacy is like no humans, I mean, he was so anti-human. I mean, it was crazy. I thought, oh my God, first of all, let's not get a caricature again, but okay. And he had such a change of heart at the end. But to Justin's point as well, I hope they do dive into more of the dynamic between the religious and military castes, because especially with Delenn now, essentially what I take from kind of being expelled from the religious caste, at least because she's no longer on the council, how that's going to interplay with, again, her clear love for Sinclair, and something is going to come up since they have, said he's Neo and is, needs to save the Matrix. I hope they delve into that further. I also have a mini question that hopefully we don't have to go beyond the rim for. The Minbari version of Cones of Dunshire, what is that?
Was that what Delenn is doing in her room when they come in?
Oh, I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I wrote it down as she was playing with magnetiles.
When I was doing the commentary on YouTube, everyone was saying it was a Minbari Lego set. So,
well, what is it? Can you sell it? Say what it is? Do they
Minbari Lego set?
We can answer that beyond the rim, John.
This show. All right. I did think one of the last things I'll bring up real quick. It was interesting. They talked about how do you honor your foes, right? How do you honor someone that you've been to war with. I mean, we've dealt with that in this country on any number of occasions. Pick any, war or conflict America's been in, and how many times do we say oops, or how many times do we say, oh, let's be friends now, or let's forget our past, let's remember our past. So it was interesting that that's why I thought it was a provocation was, oh, by the way, here was this great general that we really loved, and by Sinclair's accounts, I guess, really kind of kicked some Earth ass. He's dead, but don't forget, here let's just rub it in your face. Don't forget, he's awesome. Here he is. Like, it's an interesting question about other species. I can't imagine the Narn honoring or showing anything for their foes like this.
But that's something that you see in Earth culture, though. I mean, how many remembrance ceremonies have we had with the German people, and how many we've even done it with the Vietnamese people? We've had like joint remembrance ceremonies where both sides can come together. So I think I can kind of see where Sinclair was coming with that.
Kevin,
one of the things that occurred to me while I was watching the episode was the thing that they didn't mention was a 21 gun salute, which I know is usually done at a funeral typically, but that could be seen as provocative if you don't know the context. Another couple of random thoughts I have. One of the other guest stars in this episode that we probably paid zero attention to is Patrick Thomas O'Brien, who has been in a couple of things that I've seen, and he can be really hilarious, but he was the cart owner on the Zocalo area, but he was Satan in UHF, and it's a shame that his acting ability was wasted in this episode because he can be really funny.
John,
it was interesting. Did they mention before that it was Ducat's death or murder, depending on which side you are, was the jumping off point for the war?
We've heard about Ducat before, but I think this is the most detail you've gotten about the situation.
And that it was his death, again, however it happened, that sparked the war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I can recollect. But yeah, I know we've heard Ducat's name mentioned, but I think it was just in passing. So this is the first detail you've gotten. Gotcha. Am I right? Everybody else?
I think so.
This? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. There's a lot of, shade being thrown at Delenn right now. I'm going to back her up a little bit. I thought she was playing the perfect ambassador through all of this, where she was working to appease both sides without giving any kind of ground. Now, of course, the stealing of the body thing, I'm ignoring that part because she was the catalyst. But like the scene where she's with Neroon and Sinclair in his office, she first goes after Sinclair and then immediately turns on Neroon and goes after him, basically showing that both of you have issues here. Both of you need to recognize that those issues exist. And she's playing both sides really, really well. I thought the performance by Mira Furlong, as well as Delenn's character, was really good in this episode. I enjoyed it a lot. Regardless of if she, stole a body or not.
Well, I thought she was kind of protecting her own ass a little bit, though. I mean, to Blake's point, because I also took that same thing. We've seen her be expelled from the Grey Council, so I'll save the.
Did we?
I have a question.
She's not been expelled from the Grey Council.
Right. You guys keep asking that, and I never saw that
she
actually.
Turned down the leadership role. She is still a member of the Grey Council. There's people pissed at her. Absolutely. But she turned down leadership.
You're out.
She didn't say that.
May not be welcome back, I believe is what the actual line was. You
may not be welcome back. Yeah.
That seems like a polite way of saying you're gone.
Could be, but we have not been told at all that
Okay.
she's not a member of the Grey Council.
And that was my biggest point of confusion was, is she still in the Grey Council and can she still use that as leverage against him like she did? Or is this going to come back at her somehow because she's kind of maybe not?
The other question I would ask in that one too, Emily, that we have not gotten an answer to is who knows who's in the Grey Council? We know they fly around their super secret ship. So maybe people don't know if she's on or off or in hiatus from the Grey Council at all. So I think to Kevin's point earlier, I think it was Kevin, or maybe it was Blake, one of the two, even if she may not be on the Grey Council, which again, we don't know that, she can still pretend she is until people find out.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure if he would be of high enough rank, he would be able to have that information, since we're not really clear on how divided the structure is, and like, do the higher ranking in the warrior cast even know who's in the Grey Council to know who to like essentially defer to, or is there just one spokesperson, or do they just like send a message like, hey, this is from the Grey Council, and no one ever sees anybody. Like,
The only
are they
thing we-
that reclusive?
Sorry. The only thing we know for sure is on the Grey Council, there are 3 of each cast. That's really it. We don't know who reports to who knows whom. We just know that there's 3 from each cast because there's 9 of them.
Well, but he knew enough to ask, right? He asked, "Is this coming from the Grey Council?"
So that's true. So he did know that she is or was a part of it. Yeah. I'm not even hedging my bets here, guys. This isn't a spoiler or anything. Right now, where we are in the story, she's a member of the Grey Council.
Yeah.
Anybody else got anything?
About this, or can we move on?
Please.
Okay.
The sexual tension between
Oh,
Ivanova and Talia.
Are we prepared to talk about Dr. Franklin stroking that unconscious girl's hair in the infirmary?
I'm always ready to Franklin.
I mean, if I woke up from getting my wisdom teeth pulled and my dentist was standing over me touching my head, I would have questions.
God, I don't know where to follow that.
And I honestly, my only thought about this episode with regard to Franklin was I thought it was a pretty good episode. It seemed like he was pretty protective of her and tried to be, even about everything, but I didn't really catch on to what you're talking about, Mike. So maybe that is a little bit creepy.
I mean, he has tried to date his daughters of patience before, so we've questioned Dr. Franklin's ethics before. John, would you like to question Dr. Franklin's ethics again?
No, I think they're pretty well established, as are my thoughts on the good doctor at the moment. Perhaps he'll have an Ivanova-like reclamation as seasons move on. I don't know. Real quick before I dive into that, though, another question maybe you can answer. If just for a flash, her mom died of the plague. Is that something they'll talk about? Was there some great plague on Earth? Or is that just a throwaway, probably?
Universe building? Much like San Diego got nuked. Stuff has happened.
Throwaway.
They have those, compendiums. I don't know if it was like, there was a great plague of 2245. I don't know. Anyways.
Yeah. COVID 42.
Wow.
Every time we hear plague from anything that's before 2020, it's going to sound a little different to all of us than what it did before.
So I enjoyed this because, again, I have a million questions about the telepaths because, I just feel like when you introduce something like that, when someone can read someone else's mind and that they've established that every other species besides the Narn can do it, it's super interesting. First of all, yet again, big ups to the 90s fashion when she was like, I like this shirt. Yeah, you can get plenty more. I was like, oh, man. Classic pull. Love it. Lots of colors. But again, I picked up a X-Men parallel, right? Her X gene activated in puberty. I thought that was cool. I also really like the fact that she does have options because I guess I always kind of took it. If you were a human and you had telepathic powers, Psychor just owns your ass. And the fact that Ivanova was quick to be like, no, you have options. You can, go to Psychor. You can go join one of these other species. You can do whatever. But then I got to thinking, okay, so because it can, develop later or show later in life, again, I wonder, I asked earlier about rogue telepaths. Where are all the hidden telepaths that, if I'm, 25 or in Ivanova's mom's case, what you say, 35, and telepathy just shows itself, but I'm not on planet or on a settlement, can I just go the rest of my life maybe without being discovered? And if so, are there telepaths just out there right now? How have the Narn not kidnapped or ransomed somebody, a telepath, and forced them into servitude by now?
Good question.
Thanks.
To his point, didn't they say that Ivanova's mom made it to 35?
Yeah.
Before she was detected?
Mm-hmm.
Was it, so just to clarify, was it she made it to 35 or it showed itself at 35?
Made it.
So she had it for who knows how long and was able to just hide it.
Yeah, I feel like that was the implication. Yeah.
Yes. One of my favorite parts of this episode was the discussion between Sinclair and Ivanova, and it ends with do what you think is right, I'll back your play. And I really that kind of got me a little bit because I thought that was showing her a lot of trust. And I thought it was a good moment. The other thing I wanted to say about this is, what does it say about, their society that if Elisa Belden hadn't developed telepathic abilities, she probably would have died or, just wallowed down in the down below area for a heck of a lot longer at a minimum. It just seems such a horrible situation in that down below that I feel like could have easily been, glossed over with this episode. I just wanted to highlight that.
I'm sure she'll be fine. She has a future in acting waiting for her. She'll be fine.
Harsh. I will say, because I've said so many negative things, I will echo Kevin's comment. I did write down Ivanova being more open and vulnerable. Was far better of a character development, far more relatable than the kind of wooden caricature we got at the beginning of the season. So I did enjoy that conversation, as well as the conversation for the third option with the Minbari when, listening into 2020 ears, which she described as probably would be called socialism, where if you have a gift to give society, that's what you should focus on and, bring more good things to society and we'll take care of basic human living needs, I thought was interesting and also glad that that's the choice she made, right? She could have essentially sold herself to the Narns. She could have been, the bad guys in the Psi Corps perhaps, or she could be revered and join another civilization that values her and takes care of her so she doesn't have to steal, even though she practiced to stay good with Ivanova's communicator. I did have a question on that, but I guess I'll save it for our questions because I don't know that it's something that can be answered. But it made me think about interspecies telepathy.
I thought for sure you were going to say interspecies erotica. I really thought you were.
Almost.
That too.
Emily,
it would have been more on brand.
Emily, please go.
So kind of what John said about letting this young woman make a decision and she chose to go with the Minbari. I mean, we all know I love Delenn and she's like my favorite, but I didn't really trust how she was selling it. Like she made it seem as though she'd be using her skills for something positive. And there was something about the way it was delivered that I'm just not really buying it. Like, I feel there's some subtext there that we might not fully know yet, since we've seen that some of the decisions made in the council are based on prophecy. So it kind of made me wonder if this young woman's telepathic abilities, if they would try to use it for that in some way. So, yeah, there was something about the way she kind of sold, working for the Minbari that just didn't feel quite right.
Anybody else?
Honestly, the Minbari take on it kind of made me feel like she still didn't really have any choice in the matter. It's like being telepathic is viewed as a calling, so that's what you're going to do.
I mean, so JMS did address with the Minbari and within Minbari society that service is kind of the greatest thing. That is the noblest thing you can do, is to use your talents and gifts to be of service. So really for them, a Minbari telepath, being of service to society and offering their gifts, I mean, that's just how it would be. There's no alternate thinking there. There's no, thing within that society that says it would occur to them that someone would not use their gifts for the greater good. That's just how that society is built. We've kind of seen that even within, some of the other plots that have involved Minbari in these episodes, where they're doing something that is their calling, that is what they want, that is their role to play, their gift to offer, and they offer it freely within their society.
And I guess my question is kind of then, if it's for the greater good or to serve the Minbari society, what does that really mean? Because it sounds really nice on the surface, but it can also be used as a manipulation tactic.
The greater good.
Exactly.
The greater good.
Being creepy there, dude.
Hey, Hot Fuzz was a good movie.
Thank you. Somebody got it. As soon as you said the greater good, I had to do that.
So one last, I guess, little piece on this too. At the end, Sinclair's apology, again, I hope little Easter eggs and it comes back. He gets asked, he was like, are you sure, as the commander of the station, basically, do you want to, from Earth Alliance, apologize or basically, I don't know, go against Earth Alliance with this, which I thought was interesting with Sinclair, already not the most popular guy, clearly, as we've talked about before. And he's like, yep, I'm good with it. So I'm going to do it. And then the very last thing, don't think, since we already talked about it a little bit, I didn't notice that Ivanova's hair being down right before that drink request from Talia. Yeah, I caught it. I synced it.
Anybody else have anything they want to add before questions, predictions?
I'm shipping that. I'm just saying.
I would be a Patreon to watch and ship that, Nicole. I'm just saying.
That's not a tier. Okay, we'll go ahead. God damn it. We'll go ahead and go into questions and predictions, where we hear from our newbies one last time about any lingering questions they have. Of course, John's already shot out about 20 of them, as well as any predictions they have. And again, this is our penultimate episode of season 1. So we are coming up to the season finale next week. Emily, I'll go to you first. Questions and predictions.
Really my only prediction is that I don't feel like we've seen the last of Naroon yet. I feel like because of his position in the military, I feel like he's going to come back at some point.
That it?
Yep, that's all I got.
Cool. Jessi, question predictions.
I don't know.
Thank you. Appreciate it. John, questions, predictions, but before you do that, I meant to do this earlier. You've mentioned X-Men a couple times. I have no doubt that JMS, not that he's stealing from the X-Men, but he grew up on comics and to a point where he, lived and breathed comics for a long time. Not that he ever wrote X-Men, but he did write some seminal stuff for Spider-Man and for Thor and for Superman. So he definitely knows his comic world. But yeah, I was going to say it earlier.
It's a nice homage. I enjoy it. Not that specific idea of being an outcast is singular.
Sure.
Yeah. As usual, I have a bunch of questions. Some of them are maybe beyond the realm. Some of them are probably just ridiculousness. Like here's one. So that mind burst. So that just happens and other telepaths can just hear it. And if that's the case, what would happen if no other telepath was around? Like what if that girl had it, off station or whatever?
If a tree falls in the woods, does it make a sound if nobody's there?
She was debilitated. Would she have died? Would she have? Okay.
It seems like it happens a lot enough to where Talia knows when it happens. So, it seems like it's something that is not unusual. So,
Okay. Follow-up question. We mentioned a little bit. I'm curious, I guess now, because my assumption sounds like it was wrong about Delenn's status with the Minbari and with the Grey Council specifically, because I took it as she was out. It sounds like she might not be out. So is she out? Can I get some more clarification about where she is and how that impacts her being the ambassador? Because if the religious faction is the dominant one and they put her in place and she said that, if she's basically expelled from that faction, can she really speak with authority as the ambassador?
I'll absolutely not answer the second part, but the first part is she is on the Grey Council.
I feel like we need to move on from this, Jonathan.
When's your business, Jessica? Okay. So I already asked about the potentially roaming older telepaths or the hidden telepaths. But where am I? I'm sorry. No, I think I already asked that one. Can you legally pump someone's stomach on Babylon 5? Are there warrants on Babylon 5?
I don't know, but they pumped every Pak'mara's stomach. And by the way, we didn't talk about the Pak'mara at all, but you gotta love the set dressing. Go back and watch that scene with the Pak'mara. There are bones everywhere. There's flesh hanging from the ceiling. The set dressers must have loved that day of production.
It was nasty.
I love that scene.
What would they say?
I wrote in my notes too. Stomach pumping, is that an illegal search?
The Pak'mara have no rights.
They ate lots of stuff, just not Minbari.
But now you all get my joke when I said there was a Pak'mara in TKO watching the fight, just waiting to pick up the pieces when it's all said and done.
Well, and we did learn that Narn tastes like chicken.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't taste like chicken?
Chicken? I don't know.
Hey, Jeffrey Dahmer, what the fuck?
Okay. Listen, you didn't have any questions. You that shit.
Oh, I have comments, mother effer. I just don't have a question.
True.
My last question before the prediction. So this is what I was going to get to. How common would interspecies telepaths be? Because I can't imagine that at the very least Earth Alliance would see that clearly as an opportunity to put in spies. I would immediately have human telepaths try to infiltrate the other species to do deep reconnaissance. So how is that not a thing?
The Narn really want it to be a thing, not the spy part, but they really want interspecies telepaths. They really do.
Well, they want the interspecies erotica to get to the interspecies telepath. But what I mean more is like a member of a species being, it seemed like she was invited into Minbari, and I wonder what she's actually going to be able to do with that. Again, I would be very leery of certain species telepaths being, in my culture. So It sounds like either you won't answer that to Beyond the Rim answer, or it's not.
I'm just questioning if you have an issue with people of mixed descent and if that's a problem with you.
First of all, do not try to cancel me on this. Not even close to what I said. What I was talking about was espionage, asshole. Okay. No, I don't have any. Let me go ahead right here. The Upchuckle Nugget has zero problems with. Question was, I'm surprised. Again, with the whole telepath, I've said this multiple times, like the telepath, especially seeing how crazy, potentially bad Earth Alliance is, how are they not just utilizing all of these horrible advantages that they could have? But it doesn't seem like
John, I remember you saying a long time ago, maybe even the first episode. No, you weren't on the first episode, so it wasn't that one. But I remember you saying, I sure hope we get more telepath episodes. You're getting more telepath episodes. You're just getting spoon-fed slowly. The telepath episodes.
As you can see by my waistline, I don't like being spoon-fed anything slowly. But I
do have a question based off of what John said.
Oh, good.
What? So is that how everybody got telepaths, is mixing with humans, or are they native to each? Like, did the Narns originally have telepaths also?
The only thing we know canonically
not Narns.
Is that Narns don't have them.
Okay, so did the Minbari originally have them and because they mixed with the human race, or did they just have them?
That's a good question. Andrew, I think you're up for questions and predictions.
Wait. I want to make my prediction. Sorry.
Sorry.
Well, Jessi kind of jumped in. No, so my prediction is twofold. I agree with Emily's prediction because I would be surprised if one of Scott's favorite characters was one episode. But that leads into my prediction that we will either get into, or the catalyst for future Sinclair is the second war between the Minbaris and the humans, and that guy will play a pretty pivotal role in that.
He did have a scar on his cheek.
Delenn shadiness will also be a catalyst for that. So now Andrew can go, or I will talk over him as soon as he starts speaking.
That's usually how it goes.
Yeah, so I just had one question. Well, first of all, I'm surprised it didn't get brought up more, that stink, because I think we all know now that the season finale is Chrysalis, and then they name drop it at least in the HBO Max order. It's the second to last episode. But so my question is, what does Chrysalis mean? Because that's all Elisa said that she was able to pick up before she was blocked off. So like to me, that kind of sounds like a covert Operation Chrysalis. So, but that's just my interpretation. But yeah, so my question is, what does Chrysalis mean?
I know this is a huge spoiler, but the next episode is called Chrysalis, so you're not going to have to wait long.
As I said, it's. I know we're going to get the answer next episode, but
and if not, that's a really big cock tease from JMS. Call it Chrysalis and don't answer the question.
Didn't Sinclair say it means cocoon?
In his knowledge, because
yes,
what it is if you open an encyclopedia. Yeah. Justin, what do you got?
Really, the only thing that I have in terms of any kind of predictions, I think John already touched on it a little bit, and Emily did as well, but the growing rift in the Minbari between the warrior and the religious castes, kind of seeing how it's kind of developed and how it's kind of growing. I am also of the opinion, I know I've talked about some kind of brewing conflict or war or something like that coming up, and we got a little bit of a taste of it already. And I think maybe I would agree. I think this is probably the catalyst for maybe that said war, and maybe some kind of Minbari civil war that ends up dragging the Earth Alliance and dragging Babylon 5 in with it. So 10-4.
Good, buddy. And Nicole, questions and predictions.
Well, Andrew kind of asked what I was going to say was what's the significance of Chrysalis? I know we're probably going to find out next week, but I want to know now, damn it. I'm impatient. And then I would say really my only prediction is kind of, I don't really trust that the conflict is over with the Minbari. I think that even though they had a good discussion at the end of it and they have an understanding with the growing tensions, is pretty much what everyone else said, the growing tensions between the case and stuff. I don't know. I feel like something bad is going to happen. I just don't know what. I don't know if that's going to be the crux of the big war or if it's going to be something else, but I just know something bad's coming.
Is that the Robin Williams sketch? I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know why, but something bad's gonna happen.
Not intentionally, but that's great.
Maybe not boom today.
Always boom tomorrow. Now that all of our newbies have given their questions, predictions, we'll go ahead and shove them out the airlock so we can answer those in Beyond the Rim. So if you are watching for the first time along with our newbies, this is where you will make your exit as well. And if you have either watched the show already or just don't care about spoilers, stick around after the credits and we will go ahead and start answering all these questions and predictions. Until next time, when we talk about the season finale, Chrysalis, I am Scott, and with me as always has been
Emily,
Jessi,
The one and only Up Chuckle Nugget,
Mike,
Nicole,
Kevin,
Blake,
Justin,
and Andrew. You guys need cooler nicknames.
Time for everybody.
Chrysalis.
Sounds like
Sorry,
Cialis, the boner pill.
Boner pill.
And Film Boy.
Get Crystal. Come on, Nicole.
Oh, yes,
Delude's
Crystal.
@1 fan.
Thank you for listening to Gray 17, a Babylon 5 podcast. You can find all the places to listen to this podcast and links to our social media accounts at anchor.fm/Gray17podcast. We want to hear from you, so please join the discussion on Facebook and Twitter. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Gray 17 is a part of the Front Row Network and NPR Illinois Community Voices. You can find all the Front Row shows at thefrontrownetwork.com. Gray 17 is not affiliated with, and this podcast has not been prepared, approved, or licensed by Warner Brothers or any other owners of the Babylon 5 copyright. All audio clips included in this podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders. They are included here for the purpose of review, and no infringement is intended. The opening and closing Babylon 5 themes are available from Falling Matter on YouTube.
And what's out there? The rim. And beyond that, the truth.
Welcome back to Beyond the Rim. Again, a final warning if you do not want to be spoiled for what happens after Legacy. This is where you should exit now. If not, we'll go ahead and dive into the questions and predictions. And first up, we got John. So John had several, as he is known to do. So we'll just kind of break through these guys. What is it that Delenn is building at the end of the episode with her Jenga set?
Oh, they can just wait a week. she's building what will cause Chrysalis. How's that?
Is it actually that, or is it just generic sci-fi BS?
No, that's actually the unit.
It's the Chrysalis device or whatever.
Which was built on Epsilon 3, and it will be used again after she uses it by Jeffrey Sinclair when he goes back in the past. Because some of the items that Zathras brings to Babylon 4 with him is the Triluminary and the Chrysalis machine.
But you know how timelines work. It'll actually be used before she...
Yes. It's a time loop, which goes back to our conversation last week or 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. Let's see. Was Delenn expelled from the Great Council? We already answered that. No.
Not yet.
Not yet. I'm walking a fine line there, but not yet.
If she is out, will that affect her position as ambassador?
No.
No, not really.
No, because they don't care about B5. That's really what it comes down to. You can have that shit outpost. Have fun.
Will she still have the authority to speak as an ambassador if she is out? Yes.
And she will.
Is the plague on Earth important to the plot? No.
No, but it will be in Crusade. Different plague.
Different plague, yeah.
Have the Narn not kidnapped telepaths yet? Not to our knowledge.
Well, I'll say, and I'll say that is kind of a plot hole for me in the show. We've seen a couple times now where the Narn have tried to financially entice someone to be a telepath to provide them with genetic material. We know for a fact there's an underground railroad. There are other rogue telepaths out there in the galaxy. The fact that they have been so inept in their ability to actually get someone to agree to financial, benefit to offer genetic material just seems like a giant hole at this point.
Yeah, I would agree.
I mean, and frankly, that they wouldn't just kidnap somebody and be done with it, screw and train to entice them. We've seen the Narn are pretty capable of doing whatever they want to do. So
even if Jakar's not the Narnar,
And we'll know that the Centauri have telepaths. So, why they haven't managed to capture a Centauri telepath or something.
How common is an interspecies telepath connection?
We don't know of any, right? Like throughout the show, we don't know of any.
It's just not. It just never is a thing.
Yeah, no. I mean, you can scan another species.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting like sci-fi point. I don't know if they've ever addressed it in the show, but whatever quasi-science, whatever they use to explain telepathy, there really is no reason to believe that it would work between two different races.
Yeah, even Delenn says our minds work differently. Yeah. So, yeah.
I mean, the fact that she saw darkness in Natoth's mind could mean nothing more than a bad connection.
Bad Wi-Fi between her and Natoth, yeah.
And keep in mind what we'll learn through this too, though. I mean, it's telepaths who are able to stop the shadows. So clearly there's some established nature across species that telepaths can scan or even impact species that are not their own.
Yeah, and that was Jessi's question, so we can just knock that one out right now. How did each race get the telepaths? The Vorlons created the telepaths.
Mm-hmm.
We don't actually hear about when they created Earth telepaths, but there's in the side novels, I think it was almost now. It was like the late 2000s or maybe the early 2100s is when the Vorlons start messing with DNA to make telepaths. And they did the same thing with the Narns and the Minbari and all that.
I thought that actually got mentioned in an episode.
If it did, I don't remember. I just remember from the side. But it really could have been. It could have been dropped in somewhere. But we absolutely know for a fact that the Vorlons did make the telepaths because they use them as cannon fodder against the shadows.
Yeah, which is interesting because I guess whatever the mechanism is that allows telepathy, maybe the Vorlons set it up so that it does use a common mechanism across species.
Could be. At least a common mechanism to screw up shadows. Mm-hmm. The mind burst. Other telepaths can hear it. Not hear it, but we will see in later episodes, they can see it happening. Like when we go back to Psychor with Bester and his creepy relationship with his student, which we will talk about when we get to that episode. You see the two telepaths basically blasting each other because other telepaths can watch it happen. I forgot what episode that was, but it definitely happens. Okay.
Two of them predicted that Neroon will be back, and thankfully, yes, he will be. We will be graced with John Vickery's acting capabilities again at times.
I kind of telegraphed that, but I mean...
That's okay.
How can you not say the dude is a good actor? Because he is.
Right.
And he needs to answer my phone calls. Just saying. Just saying.
Vickery comes back as a different character at some point too, does he not?
Yes. Yeah, he's a human in another episode.
Mm-hmm.
A shitty one, but
I love a lot of the arcs that our side characters go on. I've mentioned Talon and a few others, but Neroon's arc as he moves from this to member of the Great Council to ally of Delenn is really a great arc that he goes on.
There will be another war between the Minbari and the humans. No, not so much.
But there was going to be in the original plan, but we'll talk about that on a bonus episode.
Justin asked, the growing rift between the religious caste and the warrior caste, will it lead to a civil war? Is that a coming war? No, won't be a civil war.
Be close to one.
Right. It will cause the break in the Great Council later on, or at least lead directly to it, but it's not going to lead to an open civil war. No,
you're right. But the warrior cast definitely does a power grab. That's for damn sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. What does chrysalis mean? Yeah, we heard
cocoon. Literally cocoon. Sinclair was not wrong.
Nicole said, I don't trust the conflict is over with the Minbari. That isn't the last of it.
I think individual Minbari, she's completely right. I think the warrior cast has a bone up their butt and a bone on their head about the whole issue. I mean, Neroon will say later, if I knew why we surrendered, we would never have surrendered.
Right.
So I think there's absolutely there.
To laugh or cry.
Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, but I think, as I said, the one thing I think we all should have been here is I think all three of the four of us came pretty close to spoiling something.
Yeah.
And this, because we
gun
all
ports.
messaged each other with the gun ports.
Yeah.
It's like, damn it, we cannot talk about it in the beginning yet.
Yeah, we almost gave away the gun ports. I came the closest, oopsie. But then also, like you mentioned to us on the side chat, don't talk about Sinclair talking like a Minbari.
Yeah.
But also, regardless of the Valen stuff, this actually shows me why Sinclair is going to be a good ambassador and Ranger 1 to the Minbari, because he can make those connections with them even through all of what's gone on. Yeah. You see that with Neroon at the end. That's kind of like a foreshadowing of how Sinclair is going to be able to use his abilities of personality to make his new position work when he gets those new positions. Emily's question, is there a subtext to Elisa going with the Minbari?
Nope.
No, but can they keep her?
Ouch.
I'm sorry. I'm completely with Ryan on Yum Yum. You have a really good guest actor in John Vickery, and you have a really terrible guest actor in Grace Una. She just was bad. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Does it really mean the telepaths serve the greater good? Kinda. They're meant to fight the shadows, so I would say yes, actually they do.
But it doesn't seem like when that comes up later in, I think it was season 3, that the Minbari knew how important the telepaths were. That was Sheridan that made that connection with
wasn't
Garibaldi.
Yeah, it was Garibaldi who made the connection.
Garibaldi. All right, yeah.
Yeah. Reading the book of Jaquan.
And thumped the book.
Do not thump the book, Jaquan. But yeah, I think it was so far in the past. I mean, you're talking 1,000 years. It's even these long-lasting civilizations like the Minbari and the Centauri, you're going to lose stuff in translation. So, yeah, I don't think they are aware. Cool. I think we answered them all, guys. Anything else you want to talk about with this episode in terms of spoilers? I think the newbies hit on most of it.
Yeah, I think that covers it.
Yeah.
Cool.
I still think that this episode, the more I see it, the more I think it's kind of flawed as far as the plot goes. But it overall, it's still a good episode. It's an enjoyable episode.
Yeah, I think John kind of hit on it when he was saying, this is the penultimate episode, and you'd think it would be a catalyst for what comes next. And we're used to that too. In a lot of streaming shows now that are less episodes, like I think a Game of Thrones, you always knew that the episode before the last episode of the season was going to be a throwdown, knockdown episode to kind of lead up into the season finale. And you kind of expect that. And this is not that. Even if it was aired out of order, it's still not that. But Chrysalis is going to be fun. Some shit goes down. Watch back, Garibaldi.
Yeah. Well, that'll be a fun one.
All right. Until next week when we talk about the season finale. Chrysalis, I'm Scott, and with me has been
Blake,
Mike,
and Kevin.
And we will see you next week. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and review, please, please, please. And we'll chat with you soon. Oh, and also, don't forget to click on the notify button on our YouTube account, because after next week's episode, we will be releasing our Season 1 recap. So 2 weeks from today, you'll get the Season 1 recap in your audio podcast, but if you want to watch it live, it'll come out December 11th. We'll be live on YouTube for the Season 1 recap. Thanks.
You talk like a Minbari, Commander. Perhaps there was some small wisdom in letting all species survive.
We like to think so.